Okay, so again, morning everybody. I hope you're all well. As Eva said before, my name's Harry Pratt, and I'm a solicitor at Kirklees Citizens Advice and Law Centre.
咁早晨大家嚇，我係Harry Pat 啦，我係呢一個嘅 Kirklees 嘅法律中心嘅律師。
Okay, so the plan this morning is we'll take a spin through the requirements for ILR or settlement on the BNO visa route, and we've got some slides to come with.
咁所以今日咧，我哋最主要咧係講解一下咧，就係有關於呢個 ILR 啦嘅要求啦，同埋定居嘅情況啦。亦都係通過呢個 BNO 嘅途徑而申請嘅。
Okay, so slight disclaimer in that what we're talking about this morning is the basic law, the basic requirements rather than specifics personal to each individual person, which may change a little in particular cases.
咁呢一個咧，最主要咧就係今日講咧係有關呢個嘅基本嘅要求嘅當然亦都係會根據翻個人嘅情況啦，可能會有啲嘅唔同嘅。
Now, if you do have a particular query and your situation's a little bit complicated, I'm very happy to answer that, but I may need to get a few more details out of you, and you may not want to share that with 120 odd other people.
咁咧，如果你哋有啲一啲嘅特別嘅問題或者係有關你哋嘅情況可能比較複雜嘅，咁咧我哋都好樂意為大家解答嘅咁但係我哋需要多一啲你個人嘅資料方面嘅，咁你可以同我哋再聯絡，因為我哋都明白你係唔想話同而家有120人裏邊去分享嘅。
But towards the end of the slides, there'll be one with our direct email and phone number, which is staffed by my colleague who speaks Cantonese. So you can contact us direct if there's anything particular you want to talk about that doesn't get covered today.
咁所以咧喺最尾嘅嗰個 slide 裏邊咧，咁大家會睇到啦，我哋嘅直接嘅電郵啦，同埋我哋嘅電話號碼。咁所以咧，我哋亦都會有咧廣東話嘅同事啦，係可以直接同你哋聯絡嘅，解答嘅。
Okay, so what is indefinite leave to remain? Indefinite leave to remain is settlement, and settlement is indefinite leave to remain. They're exactly the same thing.
咁乜嘢係叫做無限期居留咧？咁其實就係同定居係一樣嘅。
Okay, once you have that, you can live and work in the UK, well, as the clue's in the question, indefinitely for the rest of your life without ever applying for any other visa ever again.
佢嘅意思就係話你可以咧喺英國咧係居留同埋工作嘅，咁同埋係無限期啦亦都係唔再需要申請任何嘅簽證嘅。
It comes with full permission to work, full access to all public funds and benefits.
亦都可以咧係除咗工作同埋居留之外咧，亦都可以咧係享用呢一個公共嘅資源同埋福利嘅。
It isn't citizenship. You won't become a British citizen, but it is a step towards it. It's a necessary step towards. You have to do this first.
咁喺呢個階段咧，就係仲未係可以享有呢個英國公民嘅身份嘅。咁但係呢一個係一個嘅途徑，係係會變為呢一個英國公民身份嘅。
Once you've got indefinite leave to remain or settlement, you can only lose it two ways, really. The first is if you leave the UK for 2 years in one continuous go.
咁咧就係，但係咧，如果你係喺呢一個嘅情況之下咧，係會損失咗你呢一個嘅定居嘅身份嘅話咧，就係如果你離開英國係超過2年。
And secondly, if you commit a very serious crime and the Home Office decide to try and revoke it.
咁另外咧就係，如果你係有一啲犯咗一啲嚴重嘅罪行嘅話咧，咁內政部咧亦都可以決定係取消你呢一個嘅定居嘅身份嘅。
So assuming you don't do either of those, then once you've got your ILR, then you've got it for life.
咁如果係你冇頭先我哋所講以上兩樣嘅情況嘅時候咧，咁你如果攞到呢一個嘅永居嘅時候咧，就應該係無限期㗎啦。
Now, it's a relatively straightforward application that you just need to set out how you meet the requirements in the immigration rules.
係咁，如好直接咁樣你去做呢個申請嘅時候咧，咁就係睇下你所有嘅要求係唔係吻合嘅。
So it's an online application, as everything is these days.
係咁，而可以咧係而家一切咧都可以喺網上度做申請嘅啦。
And you just search online for the Set O form.
可以喺網上去揾到呢一個嘅表格叫 Set O。
Okay, and there's no magic to that. Set O just stands for settlement other.
Set O 呢一個咧就係意思係講呢一個定居嘅。
So to make a valid application, there's an application fee that you have to pay.
當你去作為呢個申請嘅時候咧，亦都有一個申請嘅費用你要支付嘅。
As with any other immigration application, you're required to provide biometrics, so that's fingerprints and picture.
係咁除咗之外咧，你亦都要提供一啲嘅生物認證嘅，譬如你嘅指模啊，
Sorry. You've got to prove who you are, your identity. So to do that, they ask you to provide a passport or another official travel document.
係咁，另外你都要證明你自己嘅身份國籍啦，咁所以需要提供呢個護照或者係其他嘅證明文件。
Okay, although there is a question about that coming up later.
係咁亦都要睇返咧有冇其他嘅問題啦。
You're applying under this route, then you do have to have a BNO visa at the time you apply.
係，當你申請嘅時候咧，亦都要睇返，因為你係循呢個 BNO 嘅途徑啊，咁所以亦都要睇返你有冇呢一個 BNO 嘅簽證嘅。
And you're going to be applying from within the UK. This isn't an overseas application.
另外就係你一定要係喺英國裏邊申請嚇。
Some general suitability requirements.
係咁，另外咧仲有一啲叫做適用性嘅要求嘅。
Which apply to every immigration application.
呢一個咧係適用於係任何嘅移民申請嘅。
Okay, they will consider any criminal record that you have in the UK, and if you have a serious criminal record, that may disbar you.
係咁呢一個咧，首先咧就係話有冇一啲嘅犯罪嘅情況啊，有啲刑事嘅行為喺呢一個英國嘅。
Okay, and you can't be in breach of the immigration laws, so which essentially means you can't have overstayed your visa. You can't be here illegally.
係咁就係譬如話有冇違反呢個移民條例啦，譬如話係過期居留啦。
Okay, so if you remember one thing from today, remember to apply before your existing visa runs out.
係咁要留意咧，就係呢一個申請嘅時候咧，一定要係喺你個簽證未到期之前要去申請嘅。
Now, there's various eligibility criteria that you have to meet to be granted. Excuse me.
係咁，另外亦都有一啲咧係適用申請嘅資格嘅，你一定要配合嘅。
Now, the first one, and the one that catches most people out, is the residency requirement.
係咁，首先就係話一個居留嘅要求啦。
You have to have been in the UK for 5 years before you can apply for settlement.
係，首先就係你喺申請前咧，一定係持續係居留喺英國5年。
And as you can see there, that's got to be what they class as continuous residence, which means you've got to be physically in the UK for essentially half of that time.
係，咁嗱，你亦都睇到啦，就係話佢嘅係持續性居留咧，係你要親身喺英國居留，係唔可以係離開超過一半嘅時間。
Okay, we'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but the basic rule is no more than 180 days outside the UK in any of those 12-month periods.
咁喺呢方面，我哋一陣間會詳細啲解釋嘅。咁但係基本上咧，就係嘅意思係指咧，係喺英國喺12個月內咧，唔可以離開英國180日。
Okay, there's an English language requirement.
另外，亦都有一個係 英語嘅基本要求。
Okay, again, we'll talk about this in a little more detail in a moment, but the basic rule is if you're between 18 and 64, i.e. not a child, not a pensioner, then you have to satisfy the English language requirement.
係，咁基本上咧就係18歲至64歲嘅，咁如果你係細路仔又或者係一個退休人士咧，就唔屬於呢一個範圍嘅啦。
And if you're in the same age range, you have to pass the Knowledge of Life in the UK test.
係，咁另外咧就係要有呢一個嘅英國生活知識嘅測試嘅。
There's one there about proving the relationship and care requirement, but don't read too much into that. Essentially, if you're already looking after a child or an adult dependent relative, they just ask you to carry on doing that.
係，咁另外就係話有關於證明你同其他申請人方面嘅關係啦，咁呢方面我哋唔講太多㗎啦。咁喺譬如話你而家已經係照顧緊一個嘅小童啦，又或者係有成人嘅受養啦方面啦，咁如果你咁樣嘅時候咧，繼續持續係做就得㗎啦。
And the Home Office have to be satisfied that you're of good character. So that's not just a criminal record, but other things as well, which again we'll mention when we get to that chapter.
係，咁另外喺內政部方面咧，亦都會係考量咧係一個良好嘅品格嘅嚇，唔單止係話有冇喺英國犯罪啊，或者呢啲嘅情況嚇，亦都會考慮其他方面嘅。咁喺呢方面一陣間我哋會講。
Okay, sadly, there is an application fee, and it's quite a hefty application fee, £2,885 per person.
係，咁另外咧，亦都有一個嘅申請費用嘅嚇，咁咧就係呢個係一定要支付啦，咁同埋係2885磅，係每一個申請人都要嘅。
The only good news there is that there's no immigration health surcharge to pay with this one.
不過咧喺呢方面咧就唔會再收大家嘅移民健康附加費㗎啦。
You can pay a bit extra if you want a quicker decision. They say that a normal decision will take anything in the region of 6 months, so you can pay £500 extra and get a decision within 5 working days.
係，咁另外咧就係如果大家想係快啲知道個結果嘅話咧，咁大家亦都可以享用呢一個嘅優先服務嘅，就係500磅嘅嚇，可以喺5日內咧係知道呢個結果嘅。因為以通常正常嘅程序嚟講咧，係要6個月嘅時間左右先至知道個結果嘅。
And if you're really in a rush, you can pay an extra £1,000 and you'll get a decision the next working day.
係，咁大家如果係真係想仲快啲嘅話咧，咁可以用另外一個嘅超級優先服務啦，就係1000磅嘅，咁係可以咧就係喺第二日嘅工作嘅時間最後嘅時間咧，就之前咧已經可以知道個結果㗎啦。
So the residency period. So this is the part where we were talking about you have to have been in the UK for 5 years, no more than 180-day absence in a year.
係，咁呢一個係點樣計算你係呢個居住喺英國嘅5年嘅時間咧？
And there's been lots of litigation and disputes about this over the years, not specifically in relation to BNO visas, because depending on when the year is counted, you might be over 180, you might be under.
咁咧喺呢方面咧，其實都有好多時都會有一啲嘅爭拗嘅。咁呢個亦都唔單止係喺 BNO Visa 裏邊，喺其他嘅簽證裏邊亦都會有嘅。咁係呢一個咧係最主要咧，就係要睇一睇點樣你係去計算啦，點樣係唔會超過180日。
Okay, but the good news is that the settled law on it has become that when calculating when the year chunks run, you can count it from any of 3 different times, whichever is best for you.
咁所以咧呢一個計算咧，而家咧就係有改善到嘅。咁咧所以咧係點樣去計為之1年啦？咁有3個嘅方法咧係可以用嘅。咁而選擇係一個最 適合你嘅方法。
Okay, so you can count backwards from the date of the application, the date you actually apply, which would kind of guess would be the normal way of doing things.
係咁，首先啊，就係話可以咧選擇咧，就係你申請嘅時候嗰個日期嚇，咁呢個亦都係通常會用到嘅。
But they can also count back from the date that they make their decision, which, if you're not doing a super priority thing, will be quite a distance in the future.
咁另外咧，亦都有時咧，佢哋會用咧係幾時去做呢一個決定嘅時候啦，嗰個日子嘅。
Okay, or any date up to 28 days after your date of application.
亦都咧係可能會用咧，就係話你申請之後28日內嘅任何嘅日子去開始作計算。
Okay, so this is one of those things, if you're into that sort of situation, it's getting a bit complicated, make sure to make a note of our contact details and we can go into that in some more detail with you later if we need to.
咁咧，如果你係嘅情況比較複雜嘅話咧，亦都係歡迎你咧係可以同我哋直接聯絡啦，咁我哋可以再同大家去睇一睇嘅。
But the basic rule, 180 days, what's that, just shy of 6 months, in any of the year periods of your 5.
咁所以咧，基本上咧就係話喺12個月內咧，就係唔可以離開英國180日嘅。
And it gets a little bit nuanced about what counts as a day, and there's rules about that. But again, unless you're right on the cusp, then don't worry about it.
咁可能呢個咧就係點樣去計算嘅時候咧，有時都可能唔係太清楚，咁但係你亦都唔需要太擔心嘅。
And if you are right on the cusp, let us know.
咁所以如果有咩需要，你隨時同我哋聯絡。
The English language requirements. So you need to have either passed a test at the level B1 or be exempt for another reason.
咁而關於英語嘅要求方面咧，咁係基本咧，你一定要係通過咗咧係B1 水平嘅。
Okay. Now, if you're taking a test for these purposes, please be aware that the Home Office have a list of people whose tests they accept. And if the test provider isn't on that list, it's not going to work and there's no point doing it.
咁所以大家要留意啦，當你係去進行呢一個嘅考試嘅時候咧，要睇清楚係咪一個認可嘅機構，因為咧喺內政部裏邊咧，佢哋有一個嘅清單咧，係會寫低係邊一啲係認可嘅測試嘅機構嘅。
Okay, now I didn't ask before we started, Eva, but if you haven't already, it'd be a good idea to have a list of the acceptable language providers on the Migration Yorkshire website. We get a thumbs up. Excellent. Okay, you could pass the test that way, or you don't have to do that if you have already taken and passed a degree taught in English.
如果你係已經通過咗呢一個嘅測試啦，咁但係另外一方面咧，有一啲嘅人士咧係唔需要係做呢一個嘅英語測試嘅，譬如話佢已經係有一個嘅學位啦，係以英語授課嘅。
Now, if your degree is from a university in a majority English-speaking country, so the UK, Australia, Canada, New Zealand, then they'll just accept that that's in English.
咁譬如話你嗰個學位方面咧，係由一啲嘅認可嘅大學啦，譬如係以英語嘅國家嘅授課嘅，就譬如話係英國啊、澳洲啊、加拿大啊、新西蘭咁樣，就唔需要啦。
I mean, there are degrees taught in English at universities in non-English language countries, and that's acceptable, but you just have to prove that's the case. So you'd need something from the university in question to prove that it was taught in English.
咁另外咧就係話，如果你嘅學位咧係以英語授課，不過唔係一啲英語嘅國家嘅話咧，咁都可以接受嘅。不過咧你就需要學校方面、大學方面咧係出翻一個嘅證明嘅。
So when you put it in your application, obviously you're including the test results and degree certificate, any other proof you need in relation to just showing you satisfy the requirement.
咁所以咧，當你申請嘅時候咧，亦都需要咧係包括咗你嗰個成績表啦，你嗰個證書嘅學位嘅證書啦，咁同埋其他係有關嘅證明文件嘅。
Basically, the way the whole system works, there's a list of requirements. You provide them with proof that you meet those requirements. They go down the list, tick them off, hopefully grant you settlement.
咁基本上咧，成個嘅系統咧就係話佢哋有一系列嘅一啲嘅要求嘅證明嘅，咁所以咧就係你要提供到呢啲嘅證明嘅話咧，應該就係係冇問題㗎啦。
The Life in the UK test is a separate thing, which you will also have to pass.
係咁，另外一個部分就係英國生活測試啦，你都需要通過嘅。
You find it online. There's the link there, but you just simply Google UK Life in the UK test, and you book online and take it online as well.
係咁，所以你亦都可以咧喺網上邊咧，係你睇到呢一個嘅連結咧，就可以去預約㗎啦。
Costs £50 a time. You can take it as many times as you need to until you pass it.
係咁，個費用咧就係£50嘅，咁你可以咧係測試好多次都得嘅，係直至到你咧係可以成功通過。
Okay, just make a note of the third point down there. The name you give on the test booking must be an exact match. So same order, same spelling, because it really needs to match up with your passport or ID document so they can attach it to your application.
係要留意啦，咁當你去預約嘅時候，呢一個測試嘅時候咧，你個名咧一定要同你嗰個身份證明咧係要一模一樣嘅嚇，譬如個串法啦、個寫法啦都要一模一樣嘅。
And that is for people over 18 and up to 64, same as the English language.
係咁，呢一個最主要係俾18歲至到64歲嘅人士嘅。
Now, you can apply for an exemption for both, for the language and the Life in the UK test on physical or mental health grounds.
係咁咧，有一啲嘅情況咧係可以申請豁免嘅，就係唔需要係受到呢一個英語嘅規定同埋呢一個英國生活測試嘅。咁譬如話係你身體上嘅一啲嘅情況，或者精神健康上嘅一啲嘅情況嘅。
Now, the Home Office are pretty reluctant to grant those exemptions. So we are talking about really quite serious physical or mental conditions.
咁就我哋所指咧，就係因為咧，內政部咧係睇呢一方面咧係係非常之嚴謹嘅，所以咧佢哋亦都係只係考量咧，就係話係嚴重嘅身體狀況方面啊，或者健康情況方面嘅。
Okay, we've had situations not specific to BNO settlement applications, but settlement applications generally, where incredibly ill people have been refused applications, and we've had to argue long and hard about it.
係，咁所以就係亦都係睇翻個別嘅情況啦。咁有時咧就係雖然有一啲嘅人士咧，咁可能係有病啦，咁但係亦都會有被拒絕嘅申請嘅咁所以有時候係要不斷即係要睇翻嗰個狀況。
Okay, so if you can satisfy the language and the Life in the UK test requirements by passing them, it is a lot more straightforward.
係，咁所以如果咧能夠咧係成功啦，係通過咗呢一個嘅英語嘅測試同埋呢一個英國生活知識嘅測試嘅話咧，就好直接可以係直接去申請嘅啦。
If you are wanting to apply or needing to apply for an exemption, then it's a question of getting strong medical evidence from your doctor or treating specialist. And again, in those circumstances, excuse me, do speak to a legal professional before making the application.
但係如果咧你哋係考慮緊咧係申請呢一個豁免嘅話咧，咁你一定要有非常之強嘅呢個 醫療嘅證明啦，係你嘅醫生所發出嘅啦，又或者一啲嘅專業人士咧所發出嘅嚇，咁所以咧喺呢方面，如果係有需要嘅話咧，我哋亦都提議你咧，直接同一啲嘅法律人士先討論，然後先至作出申請嘅。
So you need to satisfy the Home Office that you are of sufficiently good character to be granted settlement.
咁另外咧就係喺內政部嗰方面咧，亦都需要咧係要睇一啲嘅其他嘅方面嘅。
Okay, so they will ask you on your application form to declare anything to do with good character that's relevant.
咁喺呢一個申請方面咧，亦都會睇啦，係呢個良好嘅品格嘅。
Okay? They ask you to declare it, but obviously they're going to check anyway.
所以佢哋咧點都會係去查或者去睇睇你哋嘅申請嘅喺呢方面。
Okay, so if there is something, declare it because they'll check and they'll find it. And if you haven't declared it, they'll say that you're of bad character because you didn't declare it.
如果你冇申報嘅話咧，而俾佢哋發現嘅話咧，咁就會係有好大嘅問題㗎啦。
Okay, so we're talking about things, well, any criminal conviction, and that includes any driving offence up to including for penalty points.
咁好似話咧，又被刑事定罪啦，又或者係違反咗呢一個駕駛嘅法則啦。
Okay, now very minor things will not disqualify you, but I would urge you just to, if in doubt, just declare it.
咁所以雖然係好細嘅事，但係咧我哋都提議你咧係一定要去申報嘅嚇，因為如果係雖然有一啲小嘅事咧，都可能會被取消你嘅資格嘅。
And as well as criminal things, they're interested in civil court judgments. So that's where somebody has taken you to a county court and got a judgment against you for not paying a debt, for instance.
咁好似話，如果有一啲嘅情況而有一啲可能係去到呢一個嘅民事法院被提告各方面啦，咁你亦都要提出嘅申報嘅。
Okay, and then fairly obviously, if you've had any problems with the Home Office in relation to immigration law, you should declare that because it's the Home Office. You're on their records anyway. Declare it.
咁亦都係咧，有關於即係內政部方面咧，亦都會睇一啲嘅有關你譬如話有冇移民方面或者係喺呢一個內政部方面嘅有一啲違反呢個移民法則各方面嘅，咁所以亦都有要睇清楚同埋要申報嘅。
So, helpful little documents checklist of the various things that you're going to need to submit with your application.
咁同埋咧，你亦都要即係寫低啦，或者一個嘅文件嘅清單啦，你可以咧喺裏邊再睇清楚，然後再一齊咧去對於你嘅申請咧係有幫助嘅。
Okay, but bearing in mind this is an online application, so you'll be scanning and uploading these documents rather than posting them in.
咁要留意啦，因為咧呢一個咧都係網上嘅申請啦，咁所以你一定咧係要做掃描啦，同埋將佢上載啦啲文件，咁但係就唔需要咧係寄去嘅。
Okay, so as discussed at the start, you'll need a passport and your old BRP card.
咁喺開始嘅時候咧，你需要呢一個咧護照啦，同埋你個 BRP 嘅。
Okay, as time goes on, now that BRP cards are no longer issued, e-visas will slowly take over from those.
咁而以後啦，咁如果係唔再BRP 唔再適用嘅時候咧，咁你亦都可以用呢一個嘅電子簽證嘅。
Now, with the passport, the Home Office will want to see all of the pages because they'll want to check the stamps as to when you've been in and out of the UK over the 5-year period.
而關於嗰個護照方面咧，你一定咧係需要咧掃描晒所有嘅頁面嘅因為咧內政部係需要睇翻所有嘅印章啦，咁睇下你係進出英國嘅情況喺過去呢5年內嘅。
Okay, so that's just for use in the calculation of the absences from the UK to make sure it's not more than the 180 days in a year.
咁呢個最主要咧就係去俾佢哋去計算啦，你係冇超過180日啦，離開英國喺呢12個月裏邊。
On top of that, if you want to prove your residency in the UK, there's various things such as listed there, national insurance letter, tax details, utility bills, tenancy agreements.
咁另外咧就係亦都有一啲嘅證明關於你係喺英國所居住嘅時間啦。咁譬如一啲嘅 NI 嘅信啦、僱主嘅信啦，又或者係一啲嘅工資單啊、水電費帳單啊嗰方面嘅。
If you're applying with a family member, suppose you're applying with your dependent child or partner, then clearly you're going to need to prove the relationship, so birth certificate, marriage certificate.
咁，如果你亦都係幫你嘅即係子女啊，或者你嘅伴侶咧，係申請嘅時候咧，咁亦都要提供埋啦，譬如佢哋嘅出生證明啊，或者結婚證明嘅。
As we mentioned before, for the English language and for the knowledge of life in the UK, you need the proof of that. So test results, degree certificates.
咁頭先亦都講啦，係需要咧通過呢一個嘅英語嘅測試啦，咁所以亦都要咧提供埋呢一個嘅通過嘅結果證明啦，或者呢個學位證書嘅。
For the Life in the UK test, what they do when you pass is they give you a test pass reference number, and you put that reference number into the application when you make it.
咁就係呢一個嘅英國生活測試嘅方面啦。咁如果你通過咗咧，佢哋會俾一個咧叫做通過結果嘅一個唯一參考編號嘅，咁你就將嗰個編號咧打入去你嗰個申請裏邊。
And then when they're looking at the application, they just check the one against the other, which is why I say when you do the Life in the UK test, make sure that they've got your name exactly correct.
咁所以咧就佢哋亦都會係每一項咁去對嘅。咁所以咧，我哋頭先亦都提到啦，你參加呢一個英國生活測試嘅時候咧，你嘅名咧一定要同你嘅證件係要一模一樣嘅。
And finally, they'll ask you to sign a declaration, and that's just your consent for them to double check things, contact potentially the university or a bank if you gave them a bank statement, just to make their own checks.
最後咧就會係需要你哋簽名啦，係去申報啦，就係話亦都係同意佢哋咧係去同有關方面咧係對翻你哋嘅資料嘅，譬如話佢哋可能啦會同你哋嘅大學啊或者銀行方面咧係對呢啲資料嘅。
Okay. So the application process, absolutely key point. The existing visa must be valid. You really need to have a valid visa at the time you apply.
咁而關於呢個申請嘅程序嘅時候咧，咁你一定要留意咧，就係你而家嘅簽證咧一定要係有效期裏邊嘅。
Okay. Now, if you have a visa and it's still got a long way to run and you hit the 5-year mark, then obviously you can apply at that point.
如果咧你個 visa 咧，即係你嘅簽證咧，如果仲有好長嘅時間啦，咁亦都係已經係到達咗你呢個5年嘅，咁你就好明顯咧係可以直接去申請嘅啦。
If you've got a visa which is going to run out sort of exactly on the 5-day anniversary or close enough, then the earliest you can apply is 28 days before that visa expires.
咁，但係要留意，如果你嘅簽證日期係啱啱係去即係接觸到呢個第5年又或者係非常之接近就嚟完嘅話咧就嚟過到期嘅話咧，咁你就亦都可以咧係喺到期前嘅28日內咧，咁係去申請嘅。
Okay. People often get confused about this and think that you have to apply apply more than 28 days before it expires. That's not the case. It's within the last 28 days.
喺呢方面有好多人都比較係混淆嘅嚇，咁就係有啲人亦都會可能覺得係咪係應該係喺到期前嘅28日即係多過28日前咧係去申請嘅，咁其實唔係嘅，係只不過喺你嘅到期日嘅之前嘅28日內就先至可以申請。
So you get everything together, excuse me, you get everything together, you complete the online application, you submit it, you pay the application fee online.
係，咁而你已經準備好晒所有嘅嘢啦，亦都係檢查過所有嘅嘢之後咧，咁你就可以咧直接上網去做呢個申請嘅啦。
Okay, that's the point your application's made, and that's the thing that needs to happen before your visa expires.
係，咁所以咧你要留意啦，咁你嘅申請咧一定要係喺你嘅一個簽證到期之前咧係去遞交嘅。
Okay. You do still have to book a biometrics appointment to go to that and have your fingerprints and picture taken, but that can happen later, as long as you've excuse me, submitted the online application and paid before the visa expires.
係，咁咧如果你係需要再做呢一個嘅生物認證譬如話要打手指模或者係影相嘅話咧，呢個你係可以之後先至做嘅要預約啦。咁但係咧就係一定要清楚就係話，你一定要係遞交呢一個嘅申請表，同埋要支付呢個費用，係喺你嘅簽證到期之前。
And as we mentioned earlier, they say that a standard decision will take around 6 months. It's not 100% guaranteed. And if you pay a lot of money extra, you can get it earlier than that.
係，咁頭先亦都講過啦，就係如果以一個普通嘅一個申請嘅話咧，係需要6個月嘅時間嘅。咁亦都唔係話100% 肯定嘅。咁而如果你想早啲知道嘅結果嘅話咧，你亦都可以係額外繳交一啲嘅費用咧。
Okay. When you get your decision, it will be one of 3 things.
係，咁當你咧有結果咧，基本上係會有3個唔同嘅，即係會有3個呢個情況出現嘅其中一個。
Okay, what we're hoping for, and hopefully will apply in the vast majority of cases, is that they've looked at it, you've met all the requirements, they just grant you indefinite leave to remain.
係，咁我哋亦都希望咧，亦都希望大部分嘅人士咧，亦都可以係特別，如果你已經係係同佢哋嘅要求啦，係完全係吻合啦，咁亦都可以咧，係希望能夠攞到直接攞到呢個定居嘅批准嘅。
If, however, they look at it and decide that you don't meet all the requirements for settlement, but are still eligible for just a normal BNO visa, then the second decision could happen.
咁如果佢哋咧睇過你哋嘅文件可能有一部分啦都未能夠達到佢哋嘅要求嘅話咧，咁而你仍然係喺呢個 BNO 簽證裏邊啦，咁佢哋可能就會有第二個結果出嚟嘅。
Now, in that situation, they won't refuse you, which is crucial because it means that your legal stay in the UK continues, your continuous even residence and permission to work, etc. continues.
係，咁呢一個情況咧就係話佢哋唔係話拒絕你，不過咧有一啲嘅情況需要再睇啦。咁所以咧喺呢方面咧，咁佢哋就會係會仍然俾你係可以居留嘅。
But instead, they'll contact you and say, we've looked, you don't meet the settlement requirements, you are still eligible for a BNO visa. What we're going to do is change your application into an extension of BNO visa application.
係，咁呢個情況佢哋咧可能會係同你聯絡啦，然後就會話俾你聽有一部分嘅要求咧你未達到嘅，咁所以咧，但係你仍然咧係可以係繼續可以有呢個資格係用呢一個嘅 BNO 簽證嘅，咁可能就會轉咗你嗰個申請咧，就去呢一個延長你 BNO 簽證嘅申請啦。
So, as you'll know, BNO visa has an immigration health surcharge fee, so they'll ask you to pay that on top.
咁大家都明白啦，因為喺呢一個 BNO 簽證裏邊咧，咁亦都係需要再支付啦，呢一個嘅移民健康附加費嘅。
Okay. If you think they're wrong about what they're saying about the settlement requirements, you can, at that stage, send them more evidence to prove where they're wrong, and they might change their mind on that. But what you do need to do is either get them to change their mind or else pay the IHS fee so that you get something, you get some continuation of leave.
咁如果你覺得佢哋可能係錯嘅咁或者你係喺之後亦都可以再俾多啲嘅資料或者證明係去證明佢哋係錯嘅，咁咧你咧都係需要咧係俾呢一個 IHS 嘅費用嘅。
And so if they do that and they grant you an extension, there's nothing to stop you in the future when you do meet the requirements for settlement, just applying again.
咁咧喺呢方面咧，咁佢哋咧就可能咧係會將你嗰個BNO 啦，就係去BNO 簽證咧去延期啦。咁但係呢方面咧，亦都唔會阻止到你咧係將來咧係去再申請呢一個嘅定居嘅。
The final potential outcome is the worst one, but which hopefully shouldn't really happen very often.
咁而最後咧就係一個比較即係好最差嘅一個結果啦。咁喺呢方面亦都係亦都唔希望啦，係會即係好多個案會發生啦。
And that's where they say that you don't meet the requirements for settlement, but also you no longer, for whatever reason, are eligible for a BNO visa at all.
咁呢一個就係話你已經即係你係配合唔到佢哋嗰個嘅資格啦，咁定居嘅資格啦，咁同埋亦都係冇呢一個嘅資格係去做呢一個 BNO 嘅簽證嘅啦。
Now, there's no full right of appeal against that refusal, but you can ask them to do what's called an administrative review. And if you want to do that, it needs to happen within 14 days of you getting the decision.
咁喺呢一個部分咧，就係話你係冇呢個上訴嘅機會嘅不過咧，你可以要求咧係有14日內咧係進行呢個行政嘅再審查嘅。
So if that happens and you don't already have a lawyer, go speak to one, quick smart.
咁如果喺呢個情況之下啦，咁如果你有律師嘅話咧，你係可以同佢哋去再商量嘅。咁如果你冇嘅話咧，係希望你盡快去揾一個律師啦。
Okay, so common mistakes to avoid. I'll say it for the third time because it's the most important. Apply with a valid visa.
係啦，咁最普遍嘅一啲嘅出錯嘅情況啦，因為會影響到你，好似話會有第三個情況出現嘅咁首先就係話你冇一個有效嘅簽證。
Take care to include all of the documents that you need to prove your application.
咁同埋咧一定要係即係保存好啦，同埋處理好咧你所有嘅文件，呢啲文件係可以係作為你一啲嘅證明啦，去申請呢一個嘅簽證。
It's the applicant's responsibility to prove that they meet the requirements of the rules. It's not the Home Office's job to go looking.
咁而一個申請者咧，你係有一個你自己係一個責任咧，係去證明你係符合佢哋嘅申請嘅資格嘅，而唔係咧內政部去做嘅呢方面。
Okay. We've talked about the absence from the UK limits. Clearly, before you make an application, do a sum, make sure that you do meet those requirements.
而關於係話即係你離開英國嗰個時限嘅話咧，咁你亦都要係檢查清楚，同埋要係對清楚啦，然後先至去申請。
And you have to pay the application fee, and you have to use the correct form, otherwise they just won't accept it as an application.
咁所以另外咧就係可能係未有支付呢個申請嘅費用啦
So these are rather the contact details that I mentioned at the start for the KCalc advice line.
咁咧，所以咧喺呢方面咧，如果你哋有咩問題咧，亦都可以隨時咧聯絡翻咧我哋法律中心啦。
It's free. My colleague speaks Cantonese, and you can email or you can call.
係咁好似我哋亦都提到啦，咁我哋嘅中心咧亦都係免費嘅，我哋亦都有一個廣東話嘅同事啦，你亦都可以電郵又或者係打電話俾我哋。
Okay, the number's there, and for telephone calls, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays, 9:30 to 4 o'clock.
係咁咧，就係個時間咧，就係話星期二同埋星期四嘅，就9點半去到下晝嘅4點。
And clearly, you can email at any time.
亦都可以咧email 俾我哋嘅。
Okay, so if you've got a complicated, involved scenario, please get in touch that way.
咁所以如果你哋個個案係比較複雜嘅話咧，亦都係歡迎你哋可以同我哋聯絡。
So we have been given some questions that people have asked already. So if we run through those, they might answer any questions, hopefully answer some questions that you have.
係咁咧而家我哋有啲嘅問題啦，可能咧就係或者係大家都會問嘅嚇。
Firstly, can I apply for ILR without a valid passport if I am not willing to travel back to Hong Kong for the HK passport renewal or unable to go to the Chinese embassy due to fear of potential repercussions?
係咁好似呢一個啦，就係話我香港個護照咧就係需要去更新嘅嚇，咁但係我又唔想翻去香港，因為亦都擔心咧係即係中國大使館方面啦嘅情況。咁如果我係喺一個冇效嘅護照情況之下，可唔可以申請呢一個 ILR 嘅？
So as we mentioned quite near the start, they would normally expect a valid current passport so that you can prove your identity and nationality.
咁首先咧，好似我哋最初咧，亦都提到啦，咁佢哋係需要你有一個咧有效嘅，同埋係而家嘅一個嘅護照嘅，因為呢個係需要證明你嘅個人身份同埋你嘅國籍嘅。
It is, however, possible to apply in exceptional circumstances without one if you can prove a good reason.
咁但係咧喺某啲情況下咧，可以申請豁免嘅。咁如果你有一個非常好嘅原因係點解係有咁嘅情況？
So in that situation, you'd be needing to apply with an explanation of why you couldn't get one, a good reason of why that is, and proof of what you've done to try and get one or why you can't.
係咁，所以喺呢個情況咧，你係需要咧係要有一個好清晰嘅解釋啦，點解你唔可以係去更新你嗰個護照啦？咁亦都係要有一個非常之好同埋或者強烈嘅一個嘅原因嘅，去證明你可能係你曾經去嘗試，又或者係點解你唔可以咯？
So if they don't accept that and they don't agree to apply an exemption in your case, then it's an invalid application. So if you are wanting to go down that route, probably worth speaking to a lawyer first.
係咁因為咧，如果喺呢個情況咧，如果當內政部如果唔同意啦，去豁免你呢一個嘅個案嘅時候咧，佢哋就會當你係有一個係無效無效嘅申請嘅啦。咁所以咧，如果你係想用呢個嘅情況去申請嘅話咧，最好咧亦都提議你哋先同你哋嘅律師商討。
Question 2, if the main applicant passed away during the 5+1 period, so I guess the 5-year period, can the partner and or dependent child apply for ILR individually?
係咁，另外一個問題就係話，如果主申請人喺5+1嘅期間去世，咁佢嘅伴侶或者受撫養嘅子女，可唔可以單獨申請 ILR？
And yes, you can. Clearly, you're going to have to provide some proof, so a death certificate.
係可以嘅嚇，咁但係一定要有一啲嘅證明文件啦，譬如係死亡證。
Crikey, a long one. If the child's parents each applied for and already have a BNO visa, and that the child applies for a BNO dependent visa under the mother's name, but the father has not lived in the UK for 5 years. In this case, can a child under 18 apply for ILR with his mother only? If the child cannot apply for ILR with his mother, what are the possible solutions? Does the mother and the father need to renew the BNO visa together with the child? Can the mother apply for ILR first? And with my apologies for giving you that to translate.
No problem, thanks。咁另外就係話，如果咧另外呢一個問題就係，如果孩子嘅父母咧都申請咗 BNO 嘅簽證啊，咁而呢個小朋友啦，咁係喺媽媽嘅簽證底下嘅，咁但係爸爸咧就冇喺英國居住5年，咁喺呢個情況下，18歲以下嘅小朋友可唔可以同佢嘅媽媽一齊申請 ILR？咁另外就係如果小朋友唔能夠同媽媽一齊申請 ILR，可以有咩其他嘅方法？咁同埋就係如果父母需要同小朋友一齊續簽呢個 BNO 簽證嘅時候，媽媽可唔可以先申請咗呢個 ILR？
Okay. So when you have a situation where there are dependent children, they can apply if both parents either already have ILR or are applying at the same time.
係嗱，咁咧就係小朋友咧就係可以申請呢個 ILR 嘅，咁係可以同時申請嘅。
Okay, so you can have a situation where one parent's already got it and the other one's applying with a child. That's fine. They don't all have to apply at the same time.
咁譬如就係話，如果一個父母咧係已經係申請嘅話，咁佢係可以同其中一個父母一齊申請嘅，就唔需要兩個一齊。
You can't have a situation normally whereby one parent's applying for ILR or has it, the child's applying for it, other parent not involved at all, doesn't have ILR, isn't applying for it.
咁另外就係話有啲情況咧，就係話如果一個父母已經申請咗 ILR 啦，咁個小朋友咧亦都可以申請啦。但係就係話，如果係父母咧兩個都冇申請嘅話咧，咁小朋友就唔可以申請啦。
Okay, the only times that could happen were if one parent has died. Clearly, they can't apply, so only one parent needs to be involved.
咁譬如有啲嘅情況就係話，如果其中一個父母咧係已經去世啦，咁變咗咧就係話喺呢個情況之下咧，就算係一個父母都可以係同小朋友一齊申請嘅。
Or else a situation whereby one parent has sole responsibility for the child. So, for instance, after a divorce, if the court has given full custody to just one of the parents.
咁另外一個情況就係話咧，如果係其中一個父母有呢一個嘅獨立嘅負責呢個小朋友嘅話咧，譬如話係佢哋已經係進行咗離婚啦。
Or if neither of those apply, but there are what the Home Office calls compelling compassionate circumstances. So something unusual, which means that they can be convinced to waive this requirement.
咁另外咧就係有一啲嘅情況咧，就係如果係有呢一個嘅體恤嘅情況，就係話如果一個或者係兩個都申請即係冇得申請嘅話咧，咁佢係會有一個體恤嘅情況嘅。
So in the situation in the slide, mother can apply for ILR as soon as she's eligible, but child and father need to renew their BNO visas until they clock up 5 years.
咁喺而家呢一個嘅情況之下咧，咁媽媽係可以申請ILR 嘅，就係佢一達到呢一個嘅要求嘅時候啦，咁但係個小朋友同埋個爸爸咧就係需要咧就係再延長佢嘅 BNO 嘅簽證嘅，先至又再到達咗第5年咧就可以申請啦。
Moving on then. Do UK-born children need to apply for ILR together with their parents?
係，另外呢條問題就話喺英國出生嘅小朋友係咪需要同佢父母一齊申請 ILR 嘅
？Now, the fact that they're born in the UK changes nothing as far as applying for ILR is concerned. The same rules as we talked about just a minute ago would apply for when they can apply.
係，咁呢個情況咧就係雖然佢係喺英國出世啦，咁但係亦都唔會話係有對於佢申請呢個 ILR 方面咧有改變嘅，咁所以亦都係想即係同頭先嘅個案一樣啦，佢哋係要一齊嘅係需要一齊申請呢個 ILR 嘅。
But there might be a smarter way of going about this anyway.
咁呢個亦都係最方便嘅一個嘅情況。
So if a child is born in the UK and one of their parents already has ILR or is British, then they are just British at birth.
係咁嗱，譬如話係佢嘅小朋友啦，係喺英國出世啦，而佢嘅父母已經係有呢個 ILR 或者已經係有英籍嘅話咧，咁當佢出世嘅時候咧，佢係已經係擁有呢個英籍嘅啦。
But they don't have to do anything, they are just automatically British citizens.
咁呢個小朋友亦都唔需要做任何嘢㗎啦，佢已經自動成為呢個英籍嘅公民。
In a situation where the child's born in the UK and parent or parents don't have settlement, then they're not British. But if the parents then later get settlement, that child can apply to register as British.
係咁如果嗰個小朋友出世嘅時候，而父母當其時亦都未有呢一個嘅定居或者係呢一個嘅英籍嘅時候咧，咁佢咧就係喺之後咧，當父母咧係已經係有呢個永居嘅時候啦，咁個小朋友咧亦都可以申請咧係成為英籍嘅公民嘅。
Okay, so a situation where a child's born here, I don't know, they're 2 or 3 years old, they haven't done 5 years, they aren't eligible to apply for ILR themselves, but if their parents get granted it, then they can register as British and jump a stage.
係咁，譬如就係話啦，當小朋友喺譬如佢係2至3歲左右嘅時候啦，咁佢亦都即係未係英籍啦，咁所以咧佢亦都要等到咧父母咧係去到5年之後啦，咁先至可以一齊申請嘅。
Okay, so we're not really set on slightly going off track here. We're not really set up to talk about citizenship today, but if that's the situation you're in or might find yourself in, remember those contact details.
係咁，因為我哋今日咧亦都唔係話講呢個有關公民申請嘅方面啦，或者身份嘅方面啦，咁所以咧就係如果大家有咩嘅疑問咧，亦都隨時直接聯絡我哋啦。
Harry, can I just ask a follow-up question for this one?
Sure.
Because my understanding is that the child in that situation when the parents have a BNO visa for 5 years and they have a child, 2 years after, into their 5-year visa, the child gets a BNO visa even though they apply for 5 years. They don't get 5 years visa, they get a visa in line with their parent.
That's correct? It is correct.
Okay, so that means that everybody's visa finishes at the same time.
Yeah, so you would need to be applying for something for child. You've got to keep everybody legal.
So the parents would apply for ILR and child may need to apply for an extension of BNO visa in that situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Okay, thank you.
係咁，頭先再清楚一啲啦嚇。咁頭先就係所講咧，就係話如果個父母咧係有 BNO Visa 5年嘅，咁而佢哋喺第2年嚟到第2年之後啦，咁就有個小朋友啦。咁所以咧，佢哋亦都係啦，等到小朋友咧，亦都係唔需要有一個嘅 BNO 簽證嘅嚇。咁但係等到5年之後啦，咁就係父母方面咧，就係可以申請呢個永居啦。咁所以就係到期時咧，亦都係同一嘅時間咧，咁佢哋可以一齊咧，就係同埋個小朋友咧申請嘅啦。
Harry, sorry, just another one, because I'm just thinking if one of the parents applies for a priority service within 5 days and gets ILR before the child's visa expires, so if they can apply within 28 days, one of the parents applies, strictly on the 28 days before the visa expires for ILR, is granted ILR while the child's visa is still valid, could the child potentially then apply to register for registration as British citizen at that point?
They could, as soon as one parent is settled. An application to register for a British citizen, though, I may have to double check. I don't think it confers what they call Section 3C leave. So I don't think that extends your visa. So it's a valid application, but it's not extending your stay in the UK.
I see. So, okay, even though you apply for that while your visa is still valid? Yeah,
because citizenship law is a different beast to immigration law.
Right.
So, I mean, it falls into the category of, quite a clever idea that we should probably double check, but really shouldn't be advising anybody to do right now.
Right, okay, fair enough, thank you.
咁關於呢一個部分咧，就係頭先就提到啦。咁如果有一個嘅父母啦，咁佢係申請呢個優先服務嘅，係可以喺5日內咧就係得到個結果嘅。咁而亦都係呢個係當個小朋友嗰個簽證咧係到期之前嘅。咁喺呢方面咧，就係因為亦都係牽涉到呢一個嘅公民嘅法律啦，咁所以亦都唔同呢個移民嘅法例嘅，咁所以喺呢方面咧，就係律師方面咧，需要再詳細睇一睇，然後咧先至可以再俾大家一啲嘅回答嘅嚇。
Okay, moving on then. What are the implications on settlement for people applying to have their NRPF, no recourse to public funds, condition removed?
咁另外呢一條問題咧，就係話如果呢個申請人咧係之前係申請過取消呢一個嘅 NRPF 嘅，即係唔可以享用呢一個嘅公共資源同埋福利嘅嚇，對佢申請呢個永居有冇影響？
So I guess this is a situation where during the period you've had your BNO visa, you've applied for and been given permission to remove the no recourse to public funds condition, so you're eligible for benefits.
呢個嘅意思就係話，當你係有呢個嘅簽證啦，咁而之前咧亦都係申請咧係將呢一個嘅條款啦移除啦。
Okay, and the good news there, simply enough, is it has no implications, so you're still eligible to apply for settlement.
呢一個亦都係一個好消息嘅，咁喺呢方面咧，咁雖然係呢個情況咧，仍然係可以有資格咧去申請呢個永居嘅。
Harry, I'm just thinking with this one, so if somebody applied to have the NRPF removed, usually that was due to the finances or being at risk of destitution. So if when they're applying for ILR and they cannot afford the hefty ILR fees, is there anything that can be done to help them?
Impeccable timing, Eva. Question 6. Can I apply for fee waiver if I'm not able to afford the ILR citizenship? ILR will be ILR, not citizenship application fee.
咁啱啱呢個問題咧，就係話咧，亦都同第6條嘅問題係一樣嘅，就係話如果因為我申請呢一個移除呢一個嘅NRPF 嘅條件嘅時候咧，咁亦都係要證明啦，就係話我而家係有呢個財政嘅困難嘅，咁而喺呢方面咧，咁會唔會有一啲嘅申請嘅費用嘅豁免嘅？
Okay, so less good news on this. There is no fee waiver for settlement applications.
係咁喺呢方面咧，就冇呢一個嘅豁免費用嘅。
Okay, so if you're not in a position to pay the fee, and that'd be understandable because it's a fortune, then you would, if your BNO visa is running out, you need to be applying to extend that and apply for a fee waiver with the BNO extension.
如果係呢個情況嘅話咧，咁因為冇呢個豁免費用，而喺申請呢個永居嘅時候，又係一定係要支付呢個費用嘅，咁所以你亦都可以或者係將你嘅 BNO 簽證去延期嚇，咁延期方面亦都係需要係支付翻BNO Visa 所要求嘅所有嘅費用嘅。
Okay, I mean, you can apply for settlement after 5 years, but you don't have to apply for settlement after 5 years. You can apply at any time afterwards. So if your circumstances aren't correct for the application after 5 years, just extend until they are.
就係喺呢一個嘅申請永居啦，係有個要求咧，就係你一定係要住滿5年啦。但係亦都唔係話等於係5年之後你一定要直接去申請呢一個嘅永居嘅咁呢個時限咧，你係可以咧係直到你可以係覺得自己可以去申請呢個永居啦。咁所以咧，你係當你嘅個情況有改變啦而你亦都可以係不斷咁樣去延長你嗰個 BNO 簽證，直到你係可以申請呢個永居嘅條件嘅。
But if you are in that boat, then just make sure that you do extend when you need to. What you don't want is ever to have a point where you don't have legal permission in the UK.
咁所以你亦都要留意啦。咁如果你係要延期嘅話咧，咁一定要係要配合翻佢哋嘅要求啦，同埋佢嘅情況啦。咁因為咧，如果你係冇延期你嘅居留同埋你嘅簽證嘅話咧，咁就會係即係不合法咁居留喺英國嘅話咧，就會影響你嘅以後嘅情況㗎啦。
Okay, moving on. Can domestic violence survivor children or children from a family undertaking divorce apply for ILR with only one parent?
呢一條嘅問題就係話咧，如果係一啲嘅家庭暴力嘅幸存者嘅子女啦，又或者係一啲離婚家庭嘅子女啦，可唔可以同其中一方嘅即係父母其中一方去申請呢個 ILR 嘅
？So this is slightly going back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, which is they would normally expect both parents to be involved and either have settlement or be applying for it, but there are circumstances where they don't have to.
咁好似我哋之前講啦，就基本上咧，佢哋都係希望咧，就係兩位父母咧，都係同時一齊去申請呢個永居嘅。咁但係如果係某呢啲嘅情況咧，亦都會接受咧，就係話一位父母嘅。
So if you remember situations where one parent has sole responsibility, or failing that, if there are compelling, compassionate circumstances, you can do it with just one parent.
咁所以咧就係好似頭先所講啦，如果其中一位父母係有呢一個嘅獨立嘅撫養權啦，咁佢咧亦都可以咧係作為一個父母去申請嘅，呢一個係作為一個恩恤嘅情況。
Just bear in mind that you can't just say this stuff. You are going to have to submit proof. So if you're saying sole responsibility, you will need, say a court order from the family court after a divorce.
咁喺呢方面大家要留意啦，就係唔係話你自己係一個獨立承擔呢個小朋友嘅係一定要有一啲嘅證明嘅文件嘅，譬如話係法庭嘅命令啦，譬如係家庭法庭所頒布嘅離婚嘅證明嘅。
If it's a situation where there's been domestic violence, and that's why the family unit split up, then you would need to be putting in proof of that. And in that sort of situation, that's probably one way you want to be getting in touch with us.
咁譬如頭先所提到嘅，譬如話家暴嗰方面啦，咁而影響到咧即係家庭嘅分裂啦。咁如果係呢個情況嘅時候咧，你亦都要提供一啲嘅證明嘅咁或者你係有需要嘅話咧，亦都可以同我哋聯絡嘅。
Next one. What are those exemptions for exceptional circumstances? So to phrase that a little more straightforwardly, if you've been out of the UK for more than 180 days, what are the exceptions?
咁呢個就係話有冇其他嘅一啲嘅豁免嘅情況嚇？咁譬如話係你係離開咗英國超過180日㗎啦，有冇一啲嘅豁免？
Okay, so basic rule is no more than 180 days in a 12-month period, but you can apply to be let off that if you've got what the Home Office call exceptional circumstances.
係啦，咁喺法律上咧，咁係需要咧係有只係可以有180日啦，喺12個月嘅期間裏邊嘅可以離開嘅啫。咁但係如果你有一啲嘅特別情況嘅話咧，咁你係可以提出嚟，咁有時咧即係內政部亦都會係作為一個例外嘅情況嘅。
And the guidance is in the word exceptional. It has to be something fairly severe to qualify.
我哋所講咧係一啲例外嘅情況咧，係需要譬如話係要證明呢啲係非常之嚴重嘅，或者係一啲係好即係嚴重嘅情況之下而影響嘅。
So in the rules, excuse me, in the rules they give the example of an illness, or more specifically, a life-threatening illness for the applicant or applicant's family member.
嗱，好似一啲嘅例子啦嚇，咁譬如話一啲嘅嚴重嘅疾病啦，係對生命係有威脅嘅嚇，係譬如話對申請人又或者係申請人嘅家庭成員。
Okay, so for instance, you were abroad, you were planning to travel back to the UK, you couldn't fly because you went down with a very, very serious illness. That's the sort of thing they're thinking of.
咁譬如就係話一啲例子就係話你離開咗英國，咁你其實已經係打算係翻嚟嘅只不過因為你係非常非常之有一個嚴重嘅疾病，影響到你唔可以翻嚟英國嘅。
Or you were planning to fly back and all the flights were cancelled because there was some natural disaster, for instance.
或者咧係你回程翻嚟英國嘅時候啦，可能班飛機啦係取消咗啦，咁可能係因為一啲嘅天然嘅災害啦。
And as ever, you can't just say this stuff, you need to prove it. So you need to be putting in some evidence to back up what you were saying.
亦都係一樣啦，就係唔可以淨係話俾佢哋聽啦，你係需要提供所有嘅證明嘅文件嘅。
Question 9. I haven't actively filed a tax return in the past 5 years because I did an online self-assessment and it said I didn't need to file a tax return. Will this affect my application for ILR?
咁呢一個問題就係話咧咁我喺過去嘅5年裏邊咧，咁就冇係冇交過呢一個嘅納稅嘅申請表嘅，因為喺呢一個自我評估裏邊咧，就係話我唔需要係交呢一個嘅繳稅嘅，咁會唔會影響到我嘅 ILR 嘅身份申請？
Well, whoever asked question 9, I think you're probably okay.
而呢個情況咧，應該係我哋覺得應該係冇問題嘅。
Okay, as part of the good character requirements, they would look at if your tax affairs are in order, but only to the extent that if you're in dispute with the revenue or you haven't paid something you should have paid, that could be a problem. But in this situation where no tax was owing, then if you've done nothing wrong, you've done nothing wrong.
咁喺呢方面咧，其實咧就係除咗呢方面交稅啦，咁其實佢哋亦都會睇你有冇呢個良好嘅品格啦。咁所以咧就係譬如話可能你有一啲嘅稅項方面有啲爭拗又或者有一啲嘅稅項咧，你係冇俾，但係你應該要俾嘅。咁喺呢啲而形成一啲嘅問題嘅時候咧，咁就要睇下啦咁係咪你嘅錯啦？
Is the calculation of citizenship residency period the same as indefinite leave to remain?
咁呢個咧就係有咩可以係計算到我嗰個公民居留期嘅，同埋呢一個ILR 係咪相同嘅咧？
Okay, now we are really just talking about ILR today, not citizenship, but it's probably worth keeping half an eye on this for the future.
咁我哋最主要今日咧，亦都係討論緊呢個 ILR 㗎啦，就唔係話公民居留期嗰方面嘅。咁但係大家亦都可以開始留意一下呢方面嘅情況。
Because the amount of time you're allowed to be out of the UK is different for ILR settlement and citizenship applications.
咁因為咧，你喺即係計算嗰個居留喺英國個時限咧，咁係呢個 ILR 嘅即係永居申請同埋呢一個公民申請咧係唔同嘅。
So as we've discussed quite a lot, it's 180 days in any given year in a settlement application.
係，咁好似我哋頭先所講咧，就係180日啦。如果係呢個申請永居嘅話，
In citizenship, it's half that, it's 90 days.
咁而係呢個公民身份咧，就係一半嘅，係90日。
It can get a bit more complicated, and they will overlook things the longer that you've been in the UK, you've made the UK your home, and that's a discussion for another day, but just something to keep an eye on, perhaps.
就係話你亦都可以留意啦，有譬如話你係長時間喺英國啦，咁亦都係覺得英國係你嘅屋企啦，咁所以喺呢方面咧，咁亦都可以之後咧可以再係討論嘅。
How to prove the date of entry to the UK for citizenship applications if there is no stamp on the passport?
咁如果去證明咧呢一個進入英國嘅時候咧，當你要做呢一個公民申請嘅時候咁因為喺嗰個護照裏邊咧，你係冇蓋章噶嘛。
Okay, well, there's no specific way that I can think of offhand. It's more a question of doing a bit of detective work. I mean, if one arrived by air, do you still have the flight details, flight tickets? Could you contact the airline for them, perhaps?
係，咁喺呢方面咧，我哋可以諗到啦，就譬如話你可以咧，因為如果你係飛入嚟英國嘅話咧，咁你應該有呢個機票啦，咁亦都有啲資料啦，你可以同航空公司方面咧係去聯絡嘅。
Failing that, perhaps you could, as we discussed a little while ago, think about other ways of proving that you've been in the UK from that point. So the bank statements, the utility bills, the tenancy agreements, etc.
咁另外譬如話咧，你係即係已經喺英國啦，咁你就亦都有一啲嘅銀行嘅證明啦，咁同埋亦都有一啲嘅水電嘅證明啊，或者一啲嘅租單方面嘅。
So it is, if you're travelling in and out, a good idea to try and make sure you do get the stamp.
咁所以咧就係當你係進入嘅或者進出啦，咁你都盡量咧係要攞翻嗰個蓋章嘅。
Harry, could I just ask as well, when you're talking about bank statements, does the bank has to be the UK bank, or could it be a bank from other country?
Well, what you're looking for is to prove a UK address. So if you've got a bank from another country, but it shows on the bank statement that your address is in Bradford, then that's fine.
咁呢個問題就係話咧，當頭先所講到咧話一啲嘅銀行月結單嗰方面嘅咁係咪需要一定要係英國嘅銀行啊？定係話可唔可以係一個海外嘅銀行啊？咁最主要咧就係因為呢方面咧係要證明你有一個英國嘅地址啦，咁居住嘅地址啦，咁所以咧就係如果你嗰個月結單方面咧係雖然係海外銀行，但係如果佢睇到嗰個地址咧譬如話喺 Bradford 嘅咁都可以嘅。
And now, slightly confusing, again, probably one for another day, but as somebody's asked, we'll answer. You do not need any referees for a settlement application, but you do for a citizenship application.
咁喺呢度咧，你睇到咧就有一個諮詢人嘅要求嘅。咁喺呢方面咧，其實咧，當你申請永居嘅時候咧，就唔需要嘅。但係當你申請作為公民嘅時候咧，就需要有一個諮詢人嘅啦。
Okay, and if you're doing your citizenship application, you'll need 2 referees.
咁所以當你申請呢個公民嘅時候咧，咁你係需要有2個諮詢人嘅。
If it's a child making the application, one of them must be what we call a recognised professional who engaged with the child. So the child's teacher, social worker, doctor, something like that.
咁首先咧，如果係小朋友啦作為佢嘅諮詢人嘅話咧，佢一定要係認識呢個小朋友啦，亦都係一個係認可嘅專業人士，譬如話係佢嘅老師啦，又或者係社工啦，或者係醫生啦。
Okay, and if it's an adult, then it could be any sort of recognised professional, sort of people you'd expect: accountant, lawyer, nurse, doctor, etc., etc.
咁而作為成人嘅話咧，咁你就係可以咧係揾一啲認可嘅專業人士啦，係作為你嘅諮詢人嘅。咁譬如話會計師啊、律師啊、醫生啊、護士啊都得嘅。
Okay, so the first referee can be any nationality, and the second referee, you need to have somebody who's got a British passport.
咁係第一個諮詢人咧，咁其實佢哋係任何嘅國籍都可以嘅咁但係而第2個諮詢人咧，佢一定要係一個英國公民嘅身份嘅。
Okay, and they can't just be a British citizen, they've got to have a current valid actual passport to prove that, and the Home Office will check.
咁而呢一位諮詢人咧，咁佢就係需要咧有一個咧有效嘅護照啦咁因為內政部方面咧，亦都會去即係跟查翻嘅。
Harry, could I just ask about professional of any nationality? Has the qualification for that professional have to be recognized in the UK, or could it be a professional accountant from Hong Kong, for example?
I think a professional accountant from Hong Kong would be fine.
咁而頭先亦都問過啦，就係話關於第一個諮詢人係呢一個係認可人士，亦都係任何國籍都得啦。咁譬如話一個香港嘅認可嘅會計師可唔可以？咁喺呢方面係應該冇問題嘅。
And that, folks, you'll be pleased to know, is the end of my lengthy speech.
咁所以咧呢度咧已經係我哋最後嘅嘅簡報啦。
Okay, I think I will now have a glass of water, as I've been talking for an hour and a half, and Eve will pick it up from here.
Thank you, Harry. Do you have a break?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Harry, for the presentation, answering the questions that we've received prior to the session.
咁好多謝啦 Harry 啦，咁佢頭先同我哋做嘅簡報啦。
We do have quite a few questions in a Q&A section, so we're going to be answering them one by one. Imelda, could I just ask you to answer some of them, which are quite straightforward?
Okay, so regarding the passport, there's a question regarding does the child's passport need to be valid in order to apply for ILR? Definitely yes. 可以用中文講返啦。咁有一條問題咧，就係講緊有關於呢個護照嘅到期，小朋友嘅護照係咪都需要有效嘅情況之下先可以申請 ILR 咧？頭先其實Harry 都有提過，normally 係需要係有效嘅護照去申請 ILR 嘅。當然啦，如果有個別嘅情況係有一啲嘅 exceptional cases 嘅希望你哋聯絡我哋啦，咁我哋再作個別嘅情況再回答返你哋啦，好冇？咁另外睇下有冇其他問題先。
Imelda, I think could we start from the bottom, just so we are sure that we're going to pick up all of the questions, if that's okay. There's a question whether for English language requirements, whether GCSEs the UK GCSE exam is acceptable?
Actually, according to the KOLL appendix, they stated that the English requirement is that if you are falling into 18 to 64, you must pass the test, as well as, if you got a degree certificate. So I would double check it if they can accept GCSE. So Harry, would you like to? Yeah,
I can chip on that if you like. So if it's a GCSE that's been done here, so I guess somebody's come over as a child dependent and they've studied here, yes, it can, but you need to have a grade 4 or above.
Or above.
Yeah.
咁頭先嘅問題咧，就係話，如果係個小朋友咧喺呢度咧係考取咗 GCSE 嘅，咁應該嚟講應該都可以嘅，就但係佢一定咧要係達到咧係4級嘅，英文係4級。
Thank you. Let me just pick up the next question. So this is about professional referees, so we'll leave that at this stage. Is there a way of checking driving offences, so the ones that needs to be declared for the ILR application?
Well, they would be on your license if you've been given anything. So you can check with the DVLA.
咁另外一個問題咧，就係話關於呢一個嘅係關於呢一個嘅駕駛違反駕駛條例嗰方面嘅，咁呢一方面咧，亦需唔需要係去申報嘅嚇？咁呢一個咧就係因為喺你嗰個執照上邊啦，咁所以你咧都要係 check 翻呢個 DVLA 嘅。
There are a couple of questions related to children. So how can a child prove of residency if they don't have a job?
Me? Okay. Well, if they're applying with their parent, then their parent proving it goes a long way. And if they're in education, it's dead easy. Get a letter from the school.
咁咧就另外呢一條問題咧，就話因為小朋友咧佢冇工作啦，咁佢點樣係去證明佢係英國居留嘅？咁其實咧父母方面咧，咁係會到時一齊申請嘅啦。咁所以父母咧亦都可以提供呢方面嘅居留證明啦。咁另外小朋友亦都可以提供咧就係學校嗰方面嘅一啲嘅證明嘅。
Thank you. And we've got a question about a minor car accident, which was settled by the car insurance company and not reported to the police. Would that have to be declared for the ILR application?
No, it's not a criminal offence. You don't need to declare that.
另外一條問題咧就係有關於曾經有一次咧係一個輕微嘅。駕駛嘅意外啦，咁呢方面咧，亦都由呢一個嘅汽車保險公司咧已經係處理好㗎啦。咁仲需唔需但係就冇報告到俾呢一個警察嘅。咁需唔需要申報俾呢個 ILR 嘅申請嘅？咁喺呢方面其實唔係屬於刑事嘅，咁所以你亦都唔需要係去申報。
Thank you. It's a good question about the priority service. So if somebody applies without one, and then something happens that they need that decision later, can they add that to their application?
That's a good question. It's never come up in my experience. I think so. I don't know for certain.
咁另外咧就係有關於呢一個嘅優先嘅服務啦。咁如果嗰個係冇申請到嘅，而有一啲嘅情況出現咗，咁佢亦都係想係之後咧就再加翻落去嗰個申請嗰度啦。咁係可唔可以嘅？咁因為喺呢方面咧又未曾經試過啦，咁所以喺呢方面亦都唔太清楚。
A question about what documents do I need to provide as a proof of my residency if I didn't have a job in the first year of my residency?
They could be, again, utility bills, bank statements, tenancy agreement, anything along those lines. There's no fixed list of things. You have to think slightly creatively sometimes.
咁另外呢一條咧就係有關於譬如係因為我喺第一年嘅時候咧就冇工作啦，咁我點樣係證明到我喺英國居留咧嗰段時間？咁所以咧呢方面咧就冇話一個係特別嘅清單係要去提供嘅，咁但係你可以咧係譬如話一啲嘅水電嘅帳單啊、銀行嘅月結單，又或者係呢一個嘅租務嘅合約啊嗰方面啦，你可以盡量揾到你嘅證明嘅資料。
Thank you. Question about the child. So a child is under the age of 18 when they apply for ILR. But they would be over 18 potentially when they apply for citizenship. So at what point their life in a UK test is needed?
It would be, well, they wouldn't need one. So you need a life in the UK for settlement. You don't need it when you're under, I'm talking rubbish. It's been a long morning. So under 18, you don't need it. Over 18, you do. So you wouldn't have to for the first, you would for the second.
係，咁另外咧就係話呢條問題就係，如果個小朋友係18歲以下嘅，當佢申請呢個永居嘅時候，咁但係佢係申請公民身份嘅時候咧，就會係超過18歲啦。咁喺呢個時候，佢需唔需要呢個英國生活知識嘅測試嘅嚇？咁其實咧就係話。亦都係根據翻咧，就係16至到64歲咧嘅人士咧，係需要係做呢一個嘅測試嘅嚇。咁所以當佢申請呢個永居嘅時候，如果佢係18歲以下咧，就唔需18歲以下，但係如果佢係16歲以上嘅話咧，咁佢係需要嘅，一樣要需要呢個測試。
Thank you. Can I just ask for that one? When we talk about the child's age, we're talking at the point of application for ILR, so the date of the application.
Yes.
咁再清楚一點咧，就係話小朋友嘅年齡嘅計算嘅方法咧，就係話根據翻佢去申請呢一個永居嘅時候嗰個日子，佢係幾多歲？
Thank you. We've got a question about the character, good character. So when I was purchasing a property, I was unaware of a situation and I failed to pay overseas buyer tax. The mistake was not realized and was reported incorrectly, but have since been repaid. So everything's been sorted out. So would that have to be declared to with the ILR application?
No, unless you've actually had something criminal flowing from it or a court judgment. So if they sued you for this money and got a judgment from the court, then yes, otherwise, no.
咁呢條問題就係有關於呢個良好品格嘅嚇。咁我當其時咧就買咗一個嘅物業啦，但係我就唔係太清楚到當其時嘅情況，所以咧我就冇俾到呢一個嘅稅嚇。咁呢一個嘅錯誤啦，咁同埋亦都係好快咧，咁我已經係再即刻俾翻嘅。當我知道嘅時候。咁喺呢方面，我需唔需要申報咧？當我申請呢個永居嘅時候，咁喺呢方面，因為呢一個首先咧就唔係一個刑事嘅情況啦。咁但係如果即係呢個唔係一個刑事情況，咁所以咧基本上咧就唔需要係去申報嘅。但係如果你呢個情況喺對方曾經試過係發過呢一個法庭嘅即係命令啊，或者係有一個法庭嘅裁判嘅時候咧，咁如果係有呢方面嘅記錄嘅話咧，你係需要申報嘅。
Thank you. We've got a question about passports. So we used our new passports to apply for the e-visa a few months ago, but our BNO visa was initially linked to our old passports. So should we update the old passport details on the e-visa system? And if we don't update them, could this cause any delays?
You just need your current passport on the e-visa. When you do the settlement application, you provide copies of both and it'll be fine.
係，咁呢條問題就有關呢個護照方面嘅，咁我哋咧就係用咗一個新嘅護照咧去申請呢一個嘅 e-visa 嘅電子簽證嘅喺幾個月前，咁但係我哋個BNO 嘅 visa 咧，其實咧就係同我哋嘅舊護照裏邊嘅，咁我需唔需要咧係將我嘅舊護照嘅資料咧，亦都係擺埋落去呢一個電子簽證系統裏邊啊？咁喺呢方面咧，其實咧就係喺個電子簽證裏邊咧，係只需要你而家嘅有效嘅護照嘅啫。咁所以咧，但係咧，當你申請呢個永居嘅時候咧，就你最好咧就係影埋你嘅兩本嘅護照啦，即係舊嘅護照同埋你而家新嘅護照一齊去提供俾佢哋。
Thank you. Another question, I'm a bit confused. So if the child is living in a UK only with the mother, while the father is not in a UK and the parents are not divorced and both alive, does the child need to extend the BNO visa and wait until father has lived in a UK for 5 years before applying for ILR?
Sorry, I was waiting for the translation. The question you got to answer, and it's slightly dependent on the circumstances, is does the parent that's in the UK have sole responsibility? If they have sole responsibility, then they can just apply with the parent in the UK. If they don't, then the child's just going to have to extend.
咁呢條問題就係咧，因為都有少少混淆嘅嚇。咁如果個小朋友咧，咁係佢同媽媽咧就喺英國居住啦，咁但係爸爸咧就唔喺英國嘅，咁但係父母咧亦都冇離婚，兩個亦都冇話其中一方而去世。咁當小朋友係需要即係申請呢個 ILR 嘅時候咧，需唔需要等到爸爸係喺英國居住5年嘅？咁喺呢方面咧，亦都係要根據翻咧佢哋嘅情況啦，個別嘅情況啦，咁同埋亦都要睇翻咧，就係唔係媽媽係一個即係獨立嘅負責撫養呢個小朋友嘅嚇。咁如果係嘅話咧，咁可以同媽媽咧，即係其中一個嘅父母咧，就係去申請呢一個嘅係開始做呢個申請嘅。
Just to add to that, it's exactly the sort of question I'm slightly wary of, because I can give a sort of general answer, but the specific details are needed to give a full answer. And again, maybe one where contact us with a bit more detail and we'll dig into it for you.
因為咧，我哋都想講一講，因為個別嘅情況啦，同埋有好多唔同嘅即係情況喺裏邊啦，咁所以最好咧，如果係比較複雜嘅話咧，都係直接聯絡翻法律中心嗰邊嚇，佢哋亦都會幫你哋去解答嘅。
Thank you. Does leave outside of the rules period is counted towards 5 years residency required to apply for ILR?
It's a very good question, and I'm afraid it's a disappointing answer. No, it doesn't.
我可以用中文講一次。頭先阿 Harry 講咩？係啦，頭先有朋友問到 LOTR 加會唔會計算在內嗰5年嘅continuous residence period towards ILR？答案係唔會嘅嚇。阿 Harry 就婉轉啲答就話令到你哋失望，其實係 LOTR 已經係 stay 咗喺嗰啲 rules 係唔會計落去嘅。
So again, it's a question about, so I applied for BNO visa with adult children as my dependents, but I didn't stay enough in a UK to qualify for ILR. Can my children apply for ILR by themselves.
So children are over 18 now, yes? Yes, they can.
係，咁另外呢一個嘅問題咧，就係話咧，我咧就係冇係即係住夠呢個限期，即係5年啦。咁但係我小朋友咧就係已經係可以住夠5年啦。咁可唔可以咧？我小朋友咧係去申請 ILR 嘅嚇。咁如果當佢係成年之後咧係可以嘅。
Thank you. So for 5 years in the UK requirements, when does the 5 years start? Is it from the date the BNO visa application was approved or the date of arrival to the UK?
Date of arrival in the UK.
咁另外就係話關於呢個要求啦，係要係居住喺英國5年啦。其實呢5年係由邊一日開始計算嘅嚇？咁其實應該係由你到達英國嗰日開始計算。
I'm actually doubting myself on that one now. Yeah, leave that with me. I'll come back to you on that one.
Thank you.
因為呢個問題咧，其實都有啲嘅情況嘅，咁所以咧就係我哋會再遲啲再同大家再清楚翻解釋翻呢個情況。
The reason I say that is potentially you could count the time it took you from getting the visa to come into the UK as part of your 180-day absences. So, yeah.
因為呢個情況就係話咧，亦都可以話喺你即係攞到呢個簽證嘅時候啦，到你真正到達呢個英國，咁其中有一段時間你係即係唔係喺英國嘅，咁呢個都會係計算翻埋喺呢個180日嗰度嘅裏邊嘅。
For dependent elderly family members, if they don't have a UK bank account, national insurance number, utility bills, or council tax in their name, how they can prove residence in the UK when applying for ILR?
Well, again, as we said before, there's no fixed list of things. You just have to sometimes be creative. If they're an elderly dependent relative, medical records are usually quite a good one. That'll get your GP to confirm that they've been on the books with them and they've been a regular visitor. You can get the full GP records perhaps. And if they're applying with the person they're dependent on, again, the fact that they've been in the UK and it's accepted that they are dependent on them goes a long way.
呢一條問題咧就係話，如果我屋企咧有一啲嘅即係受撫養嘅老人家啦咁佢哋亦都冇呢個英國嘅銀行啊，亦都冇呢個 NI 又或者係水電嘅帳單啊，或者係呢一個council tax 嘅，都唔係佢哋嘅名嘅。咁我點樣證明佢哋喺英國嘅居住去申請呢一個嘅永居？咁其實咧喺呢方面咧，你亦都可以咧係或者揾你哋嘅 GP 啦，咁因為譬如話佢有睇醫生嘅記錄啊，咁由 GP 方面咧可以係開翻一個嘅證明俾佢哋譬如佢哋有定期去做檢查呢方面都可以嘅。
The last question, how many years of documents should we provide from year 1 to year 5 and how many each year, how many documents per year is 2 or more sources I needed?
Okay, so you want to cover the full period and exactly what you provide will vary in every case. You want to provide more than one source. I would say at least a couple of different sources for the period. There's no fixed. If in doubt, for your own peace of mind, put some more in, but a couple of different sources should be fine.
咁最後一個問題咧，就係話我點樣去從第1年去到第5年係咁多年嚟我嘅 文件嘅證明啊，嗰方面我要係，譬如話每一年我要係俾幾多嘅證明啊，或者係幾多嘅證明嘅來源啊，一個定係兩個啊咁。其實呢方面咧係冇規定嘅，咁但係咧就係亦都最好你係提供到啊係多過一個嘅來源嘅證明啦。
One sort of not trick, but one tip is if you're doing a multiple application, so a couple of parents, a couple of kids, then if you put in different ones for each, then they're complementary. So
咁譬如呢一個係一個 tips 嚟嘅，咁如果你係唔單止幫你自己做申請啦，或者你係幫埋你嘅父母或者係子女做申請嘅話咧，咁你都係唔同嗰個申請裏邊咧，亦都可以係有唔同嘅來源嘅證明嘅。
Brilliant. I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much, Harry and Imelda and Crystal, for your interpretation. It's been a long session, so thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
staying with
Thank you.
us.
咁今日我哋就完結咗今日嘅講座啦，好多謝大家參加嚇，亦都多謝阿 Harry 同埋 Imelda 同埋 Eva。Thank you.
We have posted a link to the feedback form. If you could complete that, please, that will really help us to understand what's needed for future sessions. And if there are any remaining questions, there are links in the chat as well, email details where to send them to.
咁咧喺嗰個 chat box 裏邊咧，咁你會睇到咧，我哋希望咧你哋可以係回獻一啲你哋嘅意見俾我哋啦，咁可以我哋係知道你哋大家有咩嘅需要啦，咁同埋如果你哋有啲咩嘅問題咧，亦都可以咧係 email 俾我哋啦，咁喺個 chat box 亦都有我哋嘅聯絡嘅資料嘅。
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you and have a lovely rest of the afternoon.
係，咁多謝大家，咁 thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.